Okay, good afternoon. Thank you so much, people. Good afternoon, good evening. बहुत ठंड है यहाँ पे और उसी के साथ I'll just have a cheers to you all and let me have a quick sip of my hot tea prepared by my sister. So thank you so much to her. So Sunday afternoon and it's the technical folks out here. So thing is, yeah, when I was like in thought of preparing this session, I was equally excited because this is gonna be a New Year's first session, and side by side, it's on the technical front that I personally love to work. More interestingly, मैं उसके साथ सेशन करने वाला हूँ because of whom I have started doing the Linux stuff. Now, important part is guys, मतलब मैं एक है ना बड़ी अच्छी saying है जो मेरे ख्याल से तुम लोगों ने सबने स्टार्टिंग से या बचपन से सुनी ही होगी कि ना पानी को जिस आकार में डालो या लाइक जिस भी बर्तन में डालो वो उसका आकार ले लेता है राइट लाइक द वाटर फ्लोज लाइक द वे यू वांट टू फ्लो इट एंड इट विल टेक द शेप ऑफ द कंटेनर यू पोर इनटू इट. Equally important is that the container in which you are pouring the water should also have that capability to hold that water. मतलब ये तो किसी ने सच में सही कह दिया कि यार पानी को जिस बर्तन में आप डालोगे वो उसका आकार ले लेगा, बट उस बर्तन की भी इक्वल इंपॉर्टेंस है कि दैट शुड बी केपेबल इनफ टू हैंडल दैट वाटर. अब बात आई कंटेनर की एंड आई गेस कंटेनर इज समथिंग दैट वी एज अ टेक persons hear out loud and clear every single day, every single place. So I thought of like to kickstart the new year. It will be a great pleasure to have someone who is working on the field and who is interacting with this terminology like containers, Kubernetes, OpenShift every single day. So when I started digging my connections, and I thought that, hey, I want to do a new beginning, and it's gonna be in a like a new year, and it is gonna be the first tech session. So I thought of like I need to invite a person who is equally into this field, and I am connected to him or her, like he has given me a start. So now I'll tell you a very interesting story before I introduce that person. Now I was in college, just like a young fellow just into the college who was having so much of aspirations to do this and that. So in 2012, when I joined the Government College of Engineering and Technology, Bikaner, I was like a person who was searching my field that where I should do continue. Though I was in CS, but it was very much difficult for me to understand that what I want to do and where I should actually see myself in future. I eventually got in touch with a guy who was doing a lot of certification. He was renowned to be in that year that he was just my senior, and every single faculty used to give his example. And I was getting curious every single day hearing about him that, okay, I also need to do something good so that people should also know me. But who is going to teach me all those things? So I thought of getting in touch with one of the person to whom I can ask. I started digging, but nobody was there. And then I eventually gathered the courage that, hey, I'll go to the guy to like I'll go to the person जिसके बारे में सब लोग बोल रहे हैं यार मतलब मैं किसी और को जाकर के क्यों पूछूं. I eventually realized I went to that person and I found out he is a very friendly guy. He just started telling me that what is this journey is all about, what is the Linux means to you. Then I requested him that please guide me. I want to do also this course. I want to be like a certificate holder, which is globally acclaimed and all like that way. He started teaching me. He became my good friend, my mentor, my guide at my initial stages. He told me where to do these certification courses, where to do the trainings, and I believe since 2012, we are in touch in and out. Wherever we go together, we do parties. And I felt even so good just before the lockdown, he joined Red Hat. So I thought of like, okay, this is a perfect stage for me that if I want to kick off my technical journey in 2021, I want you all to take the help, to take the guidance from the man himself who has actually pushed me at the very beginning that where we are coming from. And he is actually my senior, or I should say he's my good friend, he's my mentor, and luckily now we both are Red Hatters. So he worked as a site reliability engineer at Red Hat with the OpenShift performance team. And so here I bring to you Mr. Himanshu Dogra. Hello bhaiya.
Hi Gaurav, pleasure to be
Hello.
here,
So,
man.
cheers to
How are you?
you, and thank you so much
Yeah,
for accepting the request.
my pleasure, man. My pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure. ओके सो भैया मतलब मैंने जो बताया कि लाइक आज के टाइम में बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है कि आज हम कंटेनर्स या डिजिटल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन या डिजिटली एक्टिव होने की बात कर रहे हैं। मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग इज कि वो कंटेनर तो पड़ा है मेरे पास यार, जिसके अंदर मैं सारी चीजें टेक्निकली बना रहा हूँ। और वी आई ऑल्सो डिड अ कपल ऑफ सेशन अबाउट अ डेज बैक वेयर वी अंडरस्टूड दैट व्हाई इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट टू गेट स्टार्ट विद कंटेनर्स। नाउ when it comes to the container, I have a lot of things that I can do. I can show, I can customize it. What do you think, being working on the field, that why it is equally important to manage the containers also? And we are hearing this word out called Kubernetes. So can you please tell our viewer that what is this Kubernetes all about?
Yeah, definitely, Gaurav.
Yeah.
Thanks. So
Yes.
when we talk about Kubernetes, right? So it is something people understand. It is a management tool, right, which manages the
Right.
containers. So the
Yes.
requirement is, why do we have to manage a container? Why can't we manage it by our own, right? So in
Mhm.
today's world, any big organization enterprises, they have a monolithic application, the giant application, where they have multiple microservices deployed into that. Now
Mhm.
those microservices are just small, it can be small size of code, it can be bigger size of code, but they are executing isolated in a container environment, right? So I will give you a small use case what I understood about the Kubernetes, where it comes into picture. So let's say we have an application container running, right?
Okay.
And that application container requires some sort of prerequisite container, some helping container to be executed. So we
Mhm.
manually create that helping container as well. Now what
Right.
happens tomorrow? Our application scales up. It
Mhm.
our customers increases, and we have to deploy that helping container manually by our own. If in
Right.
case one of the application container goes down, we have to delete that helping container as well manually. So
Yes.
that
Yes.
all stuff, the scaling, the auto scaling, the monitoring, that part we need somebody. if we are if we are working at we are at home Saturday Sunday, we are enjoying with our family, right? Who wants to work on Saturday Sundays, right? Nobody. So why
Yes.
can't we have a system which can does some sort of things for us, right? So we
Mhm.
that can take preliminary actions, and on top of that we can do our own automation jobs and so stuff. So that's where Kubernetes comes into play. It is an open
Okay.
source, and the good part about Kubernetes is that it can integrate with multiple open source technologies as well, and it can deploy on any of the major cloud vendors like
Mhm.
AWS, GCPs, and even you can deploy it on premises, right? So there are no
Right.
restrictions as such. That's why today in the today's world, Kubernetes is growing, I believe. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, yeah, matlab, I totally agree to that thought also. And when I still remember that the technology, which is so grateful and so booming in the market, and that's the reason also that there are a lot of memes that Kubernetes is just 6 years old, and people are asking for the pure person who has like 12 years of experience in the industry, right? So, keeping those fun thing aside, but when we say managing the containers, it's equally important. You just talked about that auto scaling is very much important. If something goes wrong, who is going to take care? And if something user threshold get up, it is equally important to trace the root, that what was the cause of the actual reason that why it got failed or something like that. So when you work as a OpenShift site reliability engineer at Red Hat, do you experience such thing with the OpenStack and OpenShift, Kubernetes, or containers also? Because people see that Kubernetes is actually a Google open source initiative, but many of people don't know that Red Hat is the second largest contributor to this particular project right from day one itself. So, any comment that how you see that Red Hat is supporting this open like container initiative?
Yeah, I agree to this. That is second largest community to commit or
Mhm,
providing, their changes or uh, their commits to the Kubernetes. So
mhm.
basically, Red Hat offering the OpenShift as a Kubernetes plus couple other open source technologies and their own private wrappers like Prometheus, Grafana, Tecton. These are inbuilt solutions which we are offering to our customers alongside of the Kubernetes. So Red
Hmm.
Hat is not, I mean, it's on, see, Kubernetes is open source, right? The source code is freely available in the market. Anybody can look there and then try to figure out, I mean, try to find out the vulnerabilities also. But with OpenShift, हमने क्या किया है कि, you know, we have implemented couple other solutions. We have tried our best to make it security side of the house as well, so make it more
Yeah.
secure than the individual Kubernetes has it. So वो features जैसे Tecton है, Grafana, Prometheus, those monitoring you can enable, so वो offering by default आती है. And now we are offering the AWS OpenShift as well, so which is called as Amazon Red Hat OpenShift Amro. So my
Yeah.
experience so far is like, yeah, Kubernetes is like a, you know, I would understand like a upstream project where we have deployed our OpenShift on top of that. So every customers, like our customers are using OpenShift clusters. It is a combination of many containers which are deployed on top of Kubernetes, and then we have our own wrappers which are helping them to provide some features on top of it.
Awesome, awesome. And that's the biggest part of open source. कोई भी है
Yes,
अपने आइडियाज लाओ, एंड एक्चुअली इट इज इक्वली इंपॉर्टेंट कि वो आपके आइडियाज के साथ कंबाइन होने की कैपेबिलिटीज भी रखे,
exactly.
राइट? So what is there means, like when we were discussing, I think that you took a lot of technical word in front of me, that when it comes to Kubernetes, it's not only the Kubernetes word, there are a lot of backend technologies. So can you also tell our viewer that what we are going to discuss it today, or what we have in house for them?
Sure. Let me
And
share
for
my.
the people, please feel free to post your questions in the chat box, and we will try to answer them during this session. Okay, and here we are on the screen. Okay.
Yeah, you can see my slides.
Yes, 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 we can.
Perfect. So yeah,
Okay.
these are few areas where I see uh, these are the components which gets affected whenever we do certain actions on Kubernetes.
Mm-hmm.
So these are
Mm-hmm.
the components like kubectl, kube API server, etcd. So we are gonna talk about this, and
Okay.
yeah, we can talk in a diagram fashion as well, like
Mm-hmm.
what really happens when we hit any command and hit enter in the backend. What happens, right? So if it will be helpful for users to understand that the basics of the backend thing technology, what is happening behind any cluster operations.
So Himanshu,
So
when we talk about like, I guess even the agenda says like it is all about the kubectl, how it get validates, and how it can read the generators and all API groups, authentication, authorization, admission, etcd, initializers, control loop, kubectl, pod sync, CRI, नाम भी बहुत सारे हो गए हैं. So why don't
yeah,
you think like can we showcase them a high level diagram to all our viewers for their better understanding that what actually the kubectl do? Oh, okay, we have it on the screen now. Okay.
definitely, yeah.
Yes.
So if you look at here, right,
Uh-huh.
you see there is a user in the left hand side, and there are two components visible in the right side. One is the master,
Yes.
second are the
Yes.
nodes.
Yes.
So basically all the containers, when I say containers I mean like workloads, the applications of our users, they are deployed on the nodes are nothing
Hmm.
but host machines. It can be a EC2 machine, it can be a GCP a virtual machine, or it can be anything, right? If you're using on premises, it can be any host. It's just a
Hmm.
machine which has the compute, which has the storage and networking alongside, right?
Right.
And
Right.
on that node we have an operating system, so let's say
Hmm.
Linux here, right? And then that particular node has container runtime, which can be Docker, Cryo, Rocket. These are the container runtimes. These
Hmm.
are the solutions provided by these are the open source solutions which basically are required in order to deploy any container on top of it. And then we have kubelets networking. Those are communicating to the master nodes. So master node is something, you can say, you can understand like a engine of the Kubernetes. If you want to do
Hmm.
any operations, it has to be master node alongside with the kubelet and networking that does operations for you. If anything goes wrong with the master, which means your cluster will not be fully supported to the users.
Hmm.
There is some sort of issues, and then definitely engineers or admin has to fix it. So let me alongside this, let me explain you this as well, like
Okay.
only the Kubernetes part where we have in the left side control plane, we have schedulers, controller managers, we have Kube API servers, then we have etcd. So let's talk about that one by one.
Sure.
What are these components, right? So
Hmm.
let's talk about the Kube API server first.
Hmm.
It is a API server, which is like, I would say, the main engine, the main core of the control plane component or the master component, which communicates to many other components. So
Hmm.
if this API server is down, which means the entire communication will be down. We cannot do anything in our cluster. So you can understand, like, API server is like a single point of failure. So we always prefer to have it in the highly available manner fashion. So we can have three replicas of it. That's a further story. Then let's talk about etcd. So etcd is a distributed key value storage data.
Hmm.
It is a consistent, it is reliable, and it makes sure that individual copy of the content stores into the etcd in terms of objects will be synced across all the nodes, all the host of our clusters. uh,
Nice.
then we talk about the schedulers. So
Hmm.
schedulers are basically responsible for scheduling any pod. So we'll go in that detail in the later slides. What are the pods? Pod is the smallest unit, and what
Yes.
does the scheduler do? It schedules the pod, assigns the node to it, and then cloud controller manager basically responsible to see if we have any request, what actions has to be performed after that.
Yeah.
Then in the
Hmm.
right side worker nodes, we have kubelet. Kubelet just it's like a node, and that node has the kubelet and kubeproxy. Kubeproxy to communicate all the networking things, and kubelet is yeah, it basically uh, responsible for deploying the containers. Like it
Hmm.
helps, it talks to the container runtime engine, which could be Docker or Rocket or Cryo, and then creates the container. So it's kubelets responsible for creating the containers, not the kube API server. So yeah,
Okay.
that's what
So
I understand. Yeah.
Himanshu Bhaiya, after seeing this entire diagram, which I can understand is that there are a lot of components running behind entire management of this pod in which a container is gonna get deployed, right? So
Yes.
one of the very basic question I guess I keep on hearing, and if I believe that you will be the right person to answer that up, that when we talk about all these component, like if it is etcd, or if you talk about the schedulers, or if you talk about the API servers, or if you talk about the kubelet, can these all features can be accumulated in a single pod, or it need to be on the different port for the working, means a standalone cluster can be executed or not?
When you say standalone, you mean a single node cluster?
Yes, a single node cluster in which all the components are there into a single pod itself. Can we do that or not?
Single pod.
Hmm.
No, single pod cannot be done, but single host can be done. So
Single host.
on a
Hmm.
single host, individual component like kube API server or controller manager or scheduler, either you can deploy it using services like
Hmm.
using kube admin tool. There is a tool that you can use to deploy those as a services, or you can deploy them as a static pods. So they are going to be, they are, what are they? So kube API server is a binary that you have to
Hmm.
execute. That binary
Okay.
is written, and it's responsible for making some sort of jobs in the backend, like processing the request, talk to the different component, and serves the request, right? So that service has to be executed on the cluster. So it can be a single node cluster, but one pod can be deployed as a kube API server, which is a static pod. Another can be a scheduler. Another can be a controller manager. Then etcd. Then another DNS thing, and the networking solutions. But in a single pod, it's really hard, I would say, to manage, because if that pod goes down, entire cluster is
Hmm.
shut down, right? There's no point of
Yes.
having it. That's what I understand,
Yeah.
because it can be there can be many failures. We can have multi-container pod, but let's say if we are gonna deploy all of them, like including workloads, it's not a best
Hmm.
better best recommended, I would say.
Yes.
Yeah,
No,
it's not a
absolutely agree. I just want to like let our viewers also know that it is actually not mandatory, or it is not recommended to have everything in a standalone mode, because that
yeah,
is actually not the purpose of managing the containers, right? So
exactly.
that gives us a very view. Okay, so I have a very small question coming out of her here, that whenever I execute this command called kubectl or kubelet, so which of these component actually it first interact to? Is it like the scheduler or the kubelet board itself, or how it executes in background? Yeah.
Perfect, perfect.
Yeah.
So let me explain it through my latest slides. Let's.
Hmm.
Do you see
Oh, okay.
this?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. So in the left side, we can see there's a DevOps engineer sitting. It can be a DevOps engineer. It can be any automated script. Doesn't matter. So this is
Hmm.
script or any DevOps engineer. What it is doing is it's saying kubectl create deploy web image nginx replica 3. So
Yeah.
what is a kubectl at the first place? Kubectl is a command line utility that has been provided by the Kubernetes, and it is
Hmm.
open source utility. You can wrap up, you can provide wrappers on top of it, you can customize it. It's your choice. So this
Okay.
utility is helps us to communicate with the cluster, with the Kubernetes engine, right? So
Right.
this utility is saying I want to create a deployment. उसका जो नाम होगा वो होगा वेब, और जो इमेज होगी वो होगी nginx, and then I want
Nginx.
3 replicas of it, and it sends
Hmm.
the request to the API server. So in the back end, what happens is this particular command, this particular utility sends certain manifests to the Kube API server. When I say manifest, which means certain parameters like what you want, which version of the deployment you want. So in Kubernetes, there are separate API versions identified, like apps v1, then there are simple v1, then we have storage, networking, different API versions we have, right? So for
Hmm.
deployment, let's say we have apps slash v1 is the API
Okay.
version. Then
Right.
what type of object you want to create? So you will say I
Mm.
want to create a deployment. So deployment is a object that
Right.
kubectl command sends to the kube API server.
Hmm.
Then it verifies about the malformed image. If you're using any malformed image, if you want to deploy that malformed image, so it restricts you at the first place itself. Then let's say if you give something wrong in the command, it will stop that command itself. It will not pass it to the kube API server. For example, I'll show you my terminal. Can you see this?
Hmm.
Right. So let's say if I say kubectl create, let's say if I don't like spelling mistake,
Hmm.
deployment web hyphen image nginx hyphen replicas, let's say 3. So they say this is an unknown command. So this error has been given by the kubectl itself. This is not passing my request to the API server in order to filtering out the issues at the first place. So that's the kubectl job, basically to figures out you are providing the right set of resources you want to create then malformed image or not, right? And then it sends to the kube API server. After that, kube API server takes your request, okay,
Hmm.
and it does certain actions. What actions? It verifies you that you are the right person who is talking to me. How does it do? There is a authentication methodology. It can verify or authenticate you based on the CA certificates, the signed certificates. If you are providing that certificates to the API server, so how can you provide it? There is something called kubeconfig file. So kubectl has to provide that kubeconfig file. Whenever you run any command, you provide the default context of that particular kubeconfig file. So let me show that here as well. Say kubectl config view.
Hmm.
So this is my kubeconfig file. So let me grab and show you. My cluster name is kind. Yeah. So this config file has my cluster name, has the user, and then has the context. So this particular kube config file has the certificate information as well. So which it sends to the kube API server in order to validate. Okay, I am the right one who has the permissions to does some sort of operations in the cluster. So kube API server validates that, and authentication it does, and then it does authorization as well. How does it do the authorization? There are many modes of authorization. It can be RBAC, it can be ABAC, it can be node based authorizations. It does at the Kube API server side. I'll show that in the demo as well. Where does
Okay.
it do, where does it show? And then it talks to the etcd.
Mm-hmm.
Then it says, okay, user has requested me to create a deployment. Please create a deployment. So it
Mm-hmm.
stores the data into the etcd. So far, deployment has not created. Etcd accept that request. Okay, fine. You want to create a deployment? Let's create it. And then you revert back with the message saying that deployments.app/web has created for you. But
Understood.
here, the so far the picture is, it's like we have been to a restaurant, we have ordered something. Okay, I want pizza, your favorite one, let's say margherita
Okay.
pizza, right? So the waiter has said us, okay, he has acknowledged the request. Okay, your pizza is getting ready, just wait for it. So
Mm-hmm.
the acknowledgement we got, okay, deployment has created, but so far the deployment hasn't created in the backend. Now let's talk about what's going to happen in the kitchen, what's going to happen in the backend. After this, what happens is the controller manager, which has certain loops or scripts that takes care of any request which comes into play. Let's say the controller manager says, oh, there is a deployment for me to create.
Mm-hmm.
It sees that into the etcd and says, okay, deployment has been created. It creates a deployment. So deployment kya hota hai ki it's like a layer, like it has a replica sets inside that, and then pods. So it just creates
Right.
the replica set. So controller
Mm-hmm.
manager ka job done, and then it shuts down. उसके बाद में
Okay.
फिर कंट्रोलर मैनेजर कैन हैव मल्टीपल कंट्रोलर्स, जैसे कि एक डिप्लॉयमेंट कंट्रोलर है, दूसरा रेप्लिका सेट कंट्रोलर है, तीसरा कोई और कंट्रोलर एक्स वाई जी, यू कैन कस्टमाइज इट, यू कैन डू. सो फिर वो रेप्लिका सेट कंट्रोलर इट वेक्स अप, ओ देयर इज अ रिक्वायरमेंट फॉर मी टू क्रिएट अ रेप्लिका सेट्स, फाइन, आई एम गोना क्रिएट द रेप्लिका सेट्स फॉर यू. And then it
Mm-hmm.
creates a replica of three, because we have provided that I want three pods to be created. So वो create करके डाल देता है etcd के अंदर. Status is pod pending. So
Mm-hmm.
far everything is happening in the etcd. Okay, it is not at all creating a container yet. It's just
Okay.
updating the status in the etcd saying that okay, the pod is into the pending state. फिर आता
Mm-hmm.
है आपका it shuts down. उसके बाद में आपका scheduler it wakes up. It says, oh,
Mm-hmm.
there are three pods which has to be scheduled. That's my responsibility. I am going to provide you the respective host, or I would say node, where you have to deploy, right?
Mm-hmm.
सो
Right.
आफ्टर दैट व्हाट इट डज इज बेसिकली कैसे वो फिगर आउट करता है कि कौन सी नोड अप्रोप्रिएट है आपकी पॉड्स के लिए. देर आर एल्गोरिथम्स दैट स्केड्यूलर फॉलो, एंड एक रैंकिंग मेथोडोलॉजी फॉलो करता है कि जैसे सपोज कि हमारे पास में 3 नोड है. ओके, हमने रिक्वेस्ट डाली है कि मेरे को चाहिए जैसे 3 नोड है, तीनों की मेमोरी है सपोज 10 MB, 10 MB, एंड थर्ड वन इज 15 MB. ओके, मैं रिक्वेस्ट
Mm-hmm.
डालता हूँ कि मेरे को एक पॉड क्रिएट करके दो, एप्लीकेशन पॉड, जिसकी मेमोरी होगी 8 MB फॉर एग्जाम्पल. सो
Mm-hmm.
अभी हमारे पास में 3 नोड है, तो उसमें से जो बेस्ट रैंक है वो कैसे अलोकेट करता है कि अगर सपोज मैंने पहली नोड पे वो पॉड डाल दिया, तो पहली नोड
Yeah.
ऑलरेडी 10 MB की उसकी कैपेसिटी है, मैं 8 MB डाल दूंगा तो 2 MB बचेगा. सेम टू सेम
Right.
केस सेकेंड नोड पे होगा, बट थर्ड नोड पे मेरे को 7 MB बचेगा. सो वो उस नोड को हाई रैंक दे देगा. ओके, दिस नोड हैज मार्क्ड एज हाई. तो
Mm-hmm.
मेरे जो रिसोर्सेज होंगे, जो मेरी एप्लीकेशन होगी, वो उस पर्टिकुलर नोड के ऊपर चली जाएंगी. मतलब वो असाइन हो जाएगा कि हाँ, दिस नोड इज सुटेबल टू होस्ट योर लोड्स. उसके अलावा लाइक रैंकिंग के अलावा कैसे करता है कि देयर इज समथिंग कॉल्ड टेंट्स एंड टॉलरेशंस. अगर आपने
Mm-hmm.
किसी नोड को टेंट कर दिया कि जैसे हम टेंट बोले तो फॉर एग्जांपल कि लाइक समर में मॉस्किटोज आ जाते हैं ना, तो वी स्प्रे आउट, वी
Yeah.
स्प्रे कर देते हैं. हम स्प्रे करने के बाद में मॉस्किटो नहीं आता है. सिमिलर फैशन में उस टर्मिनोलॉजी को अंडरस्टैंड कर सकते हैं कि टेंट कर दिया नोड को, कि अगर कोई पर्टिकुलर पॉड के पास में ऐसा टॉलरेशन होगा जो उस पर्टिकुलर टेंट को टॉलरेट कर पाएगा, तभी वो पॉड उस पर्टिकुलर नोड के ऊपर डिप्लॉय हो पाएगी. सो वो टेंट्स एंड टॉलरेशन वेरीफाई करता है. फिर नोड एफिनिटी रूल्स होते हैं, वो भी वेरीफाई करता है. ये सारा जो जॉब है वो सब स्केड्यूलर का होता है. सो ये सब
Mm-hmm.
करने के बाद स्केड्यूलर असाइन करता है कि ओके, पॉड 1 should go to node 1, pod 2 should go to node 2, pod 3 should go to node 3. और ये सब कुछ अभी etcd में ही चल रहा है. ठीक है. फिर स्केड्यूलर ने अपना काम किया, उसके बाद में इट शट्स ऑफ। फिर
Mm-hmm.
क्यूबलेट, क्यूबलेट चूंकि दीज आर द होस्ट, दीज आर द वर्कर नोड्स जो हमेशा कनेक्टेड रहते हैं एपीआई सर्वर से, और
Right.
ऑन अ रेगुलर इंटरवल, आई एम नॉट श्योर डिफॉल्ट इज 15 सेकंड्स और व्हाट, सो ऑन अ रेगुलर इंटरवल वो कम्युनिकेशन करते रहते हैं कि इज देयर एनीथिंग न्यू which has to be deployed, which has to be created. So kubelet ने API server को कॉल किया कि I want to see if there is anything new for me, if there is anything pending for me. तो kube API
Right.
server communicates to HCD because HCD is like a truthful resource. अगर आपको क्लस्टर का कुछ भी चाहिए, कोई डेटा का क्लस्टर में है, कोई डिप्लॉयमेंट है, कोई ऑब्जेक्ट है नहीं है, सारा का सारा जो सिंगल सोर्स ऑफ ट्रूथ होगा वो HCD होगा, सारा कुछ
Right.
HCD के थ्रू ही जाता है। सो HCD कहेगा या there are 3 pods which has to be scheduled on respective nodes. Kubelet बोलेगा okay fine, I have taken this request, I will do the sync for you, and then kubelet does its job. It deploys the pod into that node, respective node, कि भाई एक pod है जो node 1 पे, दूसरा node 2 पे, तीसरा node 3 पे गया, और फिर HCD के अंदर में वो स्टेटस आ रहेगा pod creating. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'll show you this as well in the demo, like pod creating कैसे आ रहा है, and then yeah,
Right.
logs as well. We'll come to that part. फिर उसके बाद में क्या होता है कि ओके पॉड्स आर इनटू द रनिंग स्टेट, तो क्यूबलेट वो स्टेटस
Mm-hmm.
अपडेट करेगा एपीआई सर्वर को, ओके द पॉड्स आर इनटू नाउ इनटू द रनिंग स्टेट, एंड देन इट अपडेट्स द सेम स्टेटस इनटू द एचसीडी, बिकॉज
Mm-hmm.
एचसीडी में अपडेट नहीं करेंगे तो नेक्स्ट टाइम इफ समबडी वांट्स टू नो कि ये पॉड है भी कि नहीं है, तो एचसीडी इज द सिंक सोर्स ऑफ ट्रुथ, तो वहां से वो इंफॉर्मेशन आ सके, एंड देन इट शट्स ऑफ।
Right.
सो ये सब चीज होता है जब हम एक सिंगल कमांड प्रेस करते हैं देन बैक एंड में। सो डू यू हैव एनी क्वेश्चन सो फर्दर कुछ?
So, what I understood is that when I, as a admin or a DevOps engineer or whosoever, basically I'm a user, I'll execute the command called kubectl, and it will go to API. API will send it to the etcd that hey, this is something that I am requested to do. From there, a notification goes to the scheduler to check that whether the pod is liable to get create, or is there any kind of a confusion or whatever it is. Scheduler gets active, he identifies, he detects and checks all the measures that they need to check it. Again, the request goes to API server, and through the Cube API server, the kubelet will come into the picture and your pod get deployed. Right?
यस, इट्स जस्ट दैट कि जो
A very, very
शेड्यूलर,
basic. Yeah.
या एंड देन कंट्रोलर जो होता है वो मतलब उसका जॉब ही है कि टू फिगर आउट कि कुछ आया है क्या, कुछ नया अगर
Yes.
आया है तो उसका रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है कि वो अपने आप से देख लेगा, एंड ऑलवेज बी इन सिंक विद द एपीआई सर्वर। सो या
Sounds cool. So there is a question from Abhay coming out, that is Cube API server on different machine or it is on the same host machine itself?
right, so in this scenario it's on the different machine. So control
Okay.
plane is a host where the Cube API server is deployed, and
Right.
worker nodes are the separate nodes in this scenario. But again, if we want to deploy everything, entire cluster on a single node, then Cube API server will be deployed on the same node itself.
So it totally depends on the scenario. It can be
Yes,
or it cannot be.
it
Both are
cannot.
absolutely
Yes,
fine. Okay.
the
So
recommendation way is always be separate.
yeah, because that's the reason, because that is going to be the whole responsible for managing your entire components. So if any of the component goes down, it can definitely let you know that hey, there is an issue, and we can easily track it up also.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the part. There is another question from Anant Bhaiya, that Anant is asking that as a fresher, what type of project do you think should be done for Kubernetes?
Right.
Comments on that, please.
Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, there could be many. I the smallest I can think of कि voting application आप बना सकते हो, जैसे
Mhm.
for example कि जैसे कि let me explain. So we have a voting website जो एक वेब
Mhm.
सर्वर होगा जहाँ पे हम वो हमारी वेबसाइट होगी, वो आप कैसे भी डिजाइन कर सकते हो, ओके। वो वेबसाइट जो होगी उस पे आप वोट लोगे, ओके, एंड देन उन वोट्स को प्रोसेस करोगे। सो
Mhm.
प्रोसेस करने के बाद में उन वोट्स को आप दूसरी वेबसाइट पे, रिजल्ट वेबसाइट पे डिस्प्ले करोगे। सो ये सब कैसे होगा क्यूबरनेटीज के ऊपर? तो जो वेबसाइट आपकी जो डिप्लॉय होगी, वेबसाइट है, वेब सर्वर है, जो भी है, वो आप एक वर्कर नोड पे डिप्लॉय करोगे, ठीक है।
Right.
अब चूंकि जो आप वोट्स डाल रहे हो, जैसे यूजर ने प्रेस किया कोई भी वोट ए और वोट बी। सो सपोज मैंने वोट ए प्रेस किया, तो वोट ए का जो काउंट है वो इंक्रीज होना चाहिए। उसके लिए आपको कुछ वर्कर्स, कुछ प्रोसेसर्स लगाने पड़ेंगे, जो बैकएंड में अनदर पॉड्स हो सकते हैं, अनदर अनदर हेल्पिंग कंटेनर्स हो सकते हैं जो उसको प्रोसेस करेंगे। जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल अगर आपकी वेबसाइट, जैसे आपने अपाचे में लिया है या फिर पाइथन में लिया है, तो मैं रेडिस ले लूंगा, जो प्रोसेसिंग यूनिट है, जो प्रोसेस करेगा मेरे पाइपलाइन के थ्रू, मेरे काउंट्स को इंक्रीज करेगा। और एक वर्कर नोड ले लूंगा, कोई भी नोड जेएसएस स्क्रिप्ट की एप्लीकेशन हो सकती है, दैट कैन बी डिप्लॉयड। एंड देन उसके बाद में रिजल्ट को शो करने के लिए मैं और दो कंपोनेंट ले लूंगा, जिसमें कि पाइथन की एप्लीकेशन है जो मेरे रिजल्ट्स की वेबसाइट डिस्प्ले करेगी, दूसरी एक नोड जेएस है जो रिजल्ट्स को प्रोसेस करेगी। सो यू कैन यूज लाइक यू कैन यूज दिस स्मॉल टर्मिनोलॉजी कि भाई चार वर्कर नोड्स हैं, सॉरी चार एप्लीकेशंस हैं दैट हैज टू बी डिप्लॉयड ऑन द वर्कर नोड्स, और फिर उन एप्लीकेशंस के थ्रू कम्युनिकेशन भी आपको स्टेब्लिश करना पड़ेगा। सो उसके लिए आपको थोड़ा नेटवर्किंग, जैसे कि इनग्रेस कैसे काम करता है, लोड बैलेंसिंग कैसे होती है, सर्विसेज कैसे काम करती है क्यूबरनेटीज के अंदर, ओवरले नेटवर्क क्या होता है। सो यू हैव टू बी अवेयर ऑफ ऑल दिस, बिकॉज आप अगर डेवलपर कोई डेवलप कर रहा है उस एप्लीकेशन को, सो ही हैज और शी हैज टू राइट अ कोड जो नेटवर्किंग फिजिबल हो, जो कम्युनिकेट भी कर पाए। अगर आपका डेटा आप लेट्स से माई सीक्वल में स्टोर कर रहे हो, तो उसका यूजर नेम, पासवर्ड्स, वो भी आप सीक्रेट एक ऑब्जेक्ट है कुबरनेटिस का जो आप लेवरेज कर सकते हो, एंड दैट कैन बी पास्ड इनटू सिक्योरली। सो even on the, I think Kubernetes website can,
So
Kubernetes
even
IO. Yeah,
one of the things that I can correlate via when it comes to a fresher, definitely
mhm,
Kubernetes is something that everybody should explore.
right,
On the other side, it's not only a single component that you should learn. The things like networking plays a very important role in someone's life, and more important thing is that to understand that how the workflow is going to happen. You just
right,
mentioned about the creating of this voting application, so there can be multiple additions of the names, then how who all are pressing to that particular part. We need to keep the track from whom this is getting praise, and then which node is responsible to give that count and all things like that. And the effective management and all things are required to understand that, right?
exactly, exactly. You need to understand various objects. Like, yeah,
Mm.
networking is one of the major in that case to communicate, that you have to
Right.
understand.
So the entire project
And
is
and
involved.
and the smallest, like smallest project is you can deploy any application. Let's say if you have a code, you just want to deploy it, you want to see how the website works, you can just deploy the single website on the Kubernetes cluster. It's as easy to deploy as a pod. Simple.
I believe I was so amazed to hear when this game called Pokemon Go came out, and the Kubernetes was just shooted on another level. Because we all, as a person who works in the tech industry, I believe they attach to these small things. But Google have been experimenting this Kubernetes project since long. Means when it comes to like using the Gmail or their multiple services on YouTube or things like that, and we are grateful to Google to get this initiative started. And I'm personally, as a proud red hatter, I'm very much happy that we are the one who are equally contributing from day one itself.
Yeah,
Sounds great, Bia. Can we
yeah,
have a quick small demo also here to have this thing as a better understanding that how this entire thing works in background, right?
definitely,
Because I believe that is going to give them a very nice understanding that how actually things works in background.
definitely, Gaurav, definitely.
Yeah, please.
So just let me know if you can see the
Yeah,
command.
we can see the
Perfect.
bash.
Okay, cool. So first of all, I want to see if which cluster, what is my cluster name, what are the components that I have in my cluster. I just want to see quickly that I can just run kubectl get pods. Okay, if you want to see the cluster information, you can just see this. It will tell you my cluster name, and then it's running on my local machine and on this particular port number. And okay, now let me show you some of the workloads. So what I was talking about. So in the kube system namespace, since Kubernetes is supporting the containerization technology, having the isolation chamber where your process or your pods is getting executed. So under the kube system namespace, we have Kube API server pod, we have Kube controller manager pod, and we have Kube scheduler pod. You can see
Mhm.
this, right? And at CD as well. So these are the control plane. So the control plane is coming as a suffix to these pods, which means these are the static pods. These are
Static.
being static means like these are their manifest files are statically stored into the control plane node itself. I will show you where. uh,
Hmm.
yeah, let me just split out the screen. So all my nodes are just the containers. So this is the control plane node. Let me log into this. Now the static pod path are usually stored into the kubelet file. Config static. Cool. So you see this static pod path is at cd Kubernetes manifest. Let me go out there. See, these are the files already present out there. If I remove any of the file, these pod will get affected. So these are the
Okay.
static pods. So you can see Kube API server, Kube control manager, scheduler, and everything is in place. And these are required in terms of do some certain processing. So for this demo, what I'm gonna do is like let me just move one of this file. Let's say if I move the scheduler
Hmm.
file into the parent directory. Okay, I don't have the scheduler. Let's see what happens here. I just want to make sure that scheduler is no longer active in our cluster so that it
Yes.
cannot schedule any pod. But controller can create the replica set. Okay.
Hmm.
And replica set controller can create the pods, but it cannot schedule on any of the node. So let me just see. Okay, let me try to create deployment. Let's say web, and I want to use image busybox, and I want to sleep 2000. Okay, and that's it. Okay. So now we see we got a message, which means the request has been passed through the etcd and saying that, okay, you have a deployment named web, which is currently into not ready state. Why I'm saying this? Because out of one replica, there are zero
Sure.
replicas are currently available. I have not provided any replica command. I mean, the option that which how many replicas I want to create of that.
Yes.
So these will still be there in the 0 by 1. You can describe this and figure out why is it like that. Describe deployment.
Web.
So you see this in the description. The deployment controller basically scaled up the replica to 1.
Hmm.
Definitely the controller should have the replica sets. Yes, it has created a replica set. So
Hmm.
it wants it to desired is 1. Desired 1 means only one replica should be there. The current is we want to create one pod, but currently there are no pods running. If you take a look, there are no pods of web running because it is into the pending state. Why? Because our scheduler is currently down. I have
Yes.
explicitly remove the scheduler static pod file. So it will be into the pending state until our scheduler will be back and up running, and then it will schedule the pod. So let's see the description of this particular pod. Why is it into the pending state? Okay, it does not. No worries. Uh, but hyphen o wide will explain you that there is no IP allocated, there is no node allocated, which
Right.
means we do not have any node where this pod has to be hosted. Let me
Right.
do quick magic. Let me move that queue scheduler file here. We have scheduler back. Let's see what happens now. We'll wait. We'll see. It should automatically be running, it should automatically be having a node attached to it, that which particular node it has to be scheduled. So let's wait here. Yeah, you see
It's
this?
great.
It
Yeah.
says container creating. It got a node assigned, kind hyphen to worker node. It's creating the container so far. Okay, fine. It's running now. It has an IP address and then it
Yes.
has a node name. Perfect. So this is the scheduler job that I explained you. What if I remove the controller static pod itself? It will not create the deployment. It will not create the replica set for me, because once we have that ready, then only scheduler comes into the picture. So you want to see that demo? I can show that as well. Let me queue control. Perfect. We don't have any controller. I am going to delete this particular deployment and recreate it.
Hmm.
Okay. We just to make sure we don't have any deployment. Okay, we don't. So this time I want to create a deployment web, image busybox and replica 3. Okay. And I want to execute sleep command 2000 seconds. So far, the request has been received by API server. It has been contacted to the HCD, stored that information. Okay, deployment has been created. But what is happening in the backend? Let's see. This is the old one. Let me remove this.
So what I'm able to grasp also that it is equally important to understand this YAML file, whether it is scheduler, the controller manager, the API, and etcd, because you just explained that how it is important that if scheduler is not there, the pods are not going to come up. So
Yeah.
being an admin, so I guess to all the viewers now you have this understanding that if the scheduler file is not there or the scheduler component is not there, you won't be able to get the pods. So yeah, yes,
So let me explain something about scheduler file. If you can see this. So
yes,
basically, this particular scheduler is a static pod. When I say static pod, means there is a single container running. So this is a container which is basically executing cube hyphen scheduler is a command, is a binary which is executing inside that container. This binary is magic. This binary is doing its own job. Whatever the code has been written, open source, this binary is responsibility to figure out matches the taints and toleration, figure out the node ranking, and then allocate the nodes. Then for authentication authorization, it has the certificates, it has that binding address, then it has a scheduler file as well, which particular kube config scheduler you want to. Then if you have multiple schedulers, let's say I want to have my own custom scheduler, so in that case leader elect option comes into play. That's a different story. So currently we have only single scheduler, that's why it is true, marked as true. Then these are some check liveness probes that can verify if scheduler is up or not, something like that.
right. So people who want to dig more, please feel free to go and research about this particular file, right? Okay.
So we can see that deployment, this is I think the old one. So let me remove this.
Mhm.
We have the deployment which was created 2 minutes ago, which this deployment definition says I want 3 replicas, but it hasn't
Yes.
created any of the replica set so far, and definitely should not be any pod as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, because our controller itself is down. Now let me show you here if I can. So you don't see any controller over here, don't have any.
Right.
So I am going to move that controller file again,
Hmm.
and then let's see the magic. We will be having controller manager into the running state. It will come up slowly. State. So let's see what's happening. Now, do we have replica sets? Not yet. We have deployments. We are into ready pending state. See. Yeah, now it's up to date. Three
Yeah.
replicas it want. Let's see the availability. Okay, one is up, two is up, three is up. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Let me see. Sets. Okay, replica set is up to date. And then let's check the pods. Yeah. So one quick thing I want to explain to my user why the pod name is like this. So
Hmm.
when the deployment name is web, so the first part of the name is the deployment. The second part will be associated as a replica set. So you can see here in the replica set as well, it contains the deployment name and then some random value. So this is the replica set name, and then this is the pod. It is also a random value. So that's how the pod. If so, based on this, you can understand. Oh, this particular pod is something related to either deployment config or deployments, or replica set or replica set controllers. So if let's say, for example, if I just normally deploy Nginx pod with Nginx image, will not have this weird name. We'll just have Nginx. Simple. So why is
Right.
it having web including? Because it is always be associated. Okay, this is the chain of deployment and the replica set, and then the pods. Okay.
Right.
Then okay, one important thing is like in terms of the Kube API server, we are doing all these commands only because of the Kube API server. If I remove this particular file from here, right, I will not be able to execute any of the things. Let's do this experiment as well. I have removed this from the static pod path. Let's see if I can just do any command. Because in order to first communicate with the cluster, you need API server to be available. So it will answer the question of a user who say, I mean, as a recommendation, right? Why do we need? Why there is a more importance of the API server? If it, what if it is if it goes down? If it goes down, you cannot interact anything to this cluster. Now you can see internal error. We
Right.
are itself not able to communicate to the server. We don't have a server. Now everything is waste. Everything is useless over here. So in such scenarios, we basically have to dig more, go some downstream side. Let's say if we are hosting our workloads on the AWS or GCP, we look at that side. What if this particular node went wrong? Something went wrong for that particular API server node at the AWS side. We have to restart it or something. It can break out things as well. And we always recommend to go with the high availability manner as well, so that if one pod or one deployment of the API server goes down, other two will be up and running. So that's why it's highly recommended to always
Hmm.
have the multiple replicas of API servers. So now I have this back. It should always be back. A minute. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Uh, okay. So we how much time we have left now?
That's the thing. Like, let's take few of the questions
Yeah.
out there. So Shivani has a question that what is the role of container management tool in whole process of running a kubectl command?
Sorry. What is the?
So
Mhm.
question is what is the role of the container management tool in whole process of running a kubectl command?
Okay, so container management tool is like Docker. Does
Hmm.
she mean by Docker? Container runtime.
I think
So
so.
if yes, then container runtime interface, the engine, basically the Docker is responsible to deploy the containers. It cannot be deployed without that interface itself. If we don't have any CRI engine present, we will not be having any containers. So basically, if you look at my slides, basically over here we say okay, kubelet is going to deploy the pod for us, right? But it is not kubelet, actually it is the Docker, or it is any other solutions like Docker, like Cry or Rocket.
Right.
That's because I can, let me, if I can explain something. If you look at the IP addresses assigned over here, how does it come? It
Yes.
comes through the networking, what is implemented in that CNI. If there is any CNI, the networking interface solution is there or not. So this comes from there. That is
Okay.
all part of the Docker, which communicates to that interface and then allocate the IP addresses. So Docker are the ones who basically deploys those containers. So it is essential, always essential. We cannot
Mhm.
neglect. If Docker itself is not running, everything is up and running, but we cannot deploy the pod, because Docker, we require Docker or any suitable solutions.
So I
Very
believe basically even to run the containers, we require a runtime engine or a container management tool, something similar to Docker or Rocket or any other things. And then to manage them efficiently, we require kubectl, and that's how the things works.
Yeah,
So I guess
kubectl is, yeah, it's like a command line utility that you can execute. I mean, that you can interact with the cluster.
right. So I guess Shivani, I hope that justifies the answer. But if you still have, please feel free to drop the question, and we will revert back. There is a question, Bhaiya, again coming from Clarissa that I had passed a CK exam,
Mhm.
certified Kubernetes associate, and congratulations to you, Bhaiya. You also did it just about few days back. So her question is like, I had passed a CK exam. If I want to pass the OpenShift admin exam, the Red Hat OpenShift admin exam, do I need specific knowledge about RHEL 8 Linux? I had a broad, so they said that I had a broad Linux knowledge or knowledge about the OpenShift configuration is enough. So, do you have any comment on that?
I would say if you know any Linux platform would be fine. Very few areas where if you have to debug or troubleshoot, let's say for example IP tables or IP link or IP DDR commands or so and so stuff, right? That is somewhat a little bit of difference than Ubuntu and Red Hat. In that case, you might require. Otherwise, if you know the Linux platform, any of them, I think you will be like it will be easy for you to attempt it, because you know the core concepts. How does Kubernetes work? How does OpenShift component works? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So
that's what I would.
I also agree. Means I didn't have cleared the CKA, but what I feel is that OpenShift exam is all about the OpenShift, not about the RHEL, because we have a couple of other exams like Red Hat Certified System Admin and even Red Hat Troubleshooting and other things are there where you deeply inquired the understanding of RHEL platform. But you rightly mentioned if you need to troubleshoot,
Yeah.
we should be doing that. So one question coming from Vishal Bhaiya, that Apache Mesos, Marathon and Kubernetes are same or different?
Uh,
Do you
I
experience means I haven't
I have
explored
heard.
Apache Mesos
Yeah, I
much.
haven't explored that much about. I have heard of the Apache Mesos, but I haven't
Mhm.
explored. I think,
But
yeah,
I
they are the container management tools itself, like how Kubernetes has it. Yeah, but
but they are
I've,
definitely not same like the
yeah,
Kubernetes does
they are not
differ.
same. Yeah, it's a bit different.
It is similar to like when we talk about the Podman, which is daemonless, and talking on the other side when it's come to the Docker. So
Yeah.
my understanding would be like that way, but I don't want to comment because I haven't explored that. But if somebody has, please feel free to drop it. Um, One more question coming from Rudra here. He said that like Docker, containers are taking up the whole industry. So, do you think that Golang will be the other upcoming programming language of the industry, and industry will move to the Golang in the major part?
I strongly agree to this point. Why? Because with OpenShift, we basically do the customization. Everything is used in terms
Hmm.
of operators. So earlier, with OpenShift version 3, we were having Ansible to does the automation job. But with V4, we are highly recommended. We highly recommend, or we are strongly using the operators, which are basically written into the Golang at the backend. So
Okay.
that's where you definitely, I think the world is changing now, and yeah, technology is adopting that, because Golang is such a language that can, that we can leverage and provide certain operators, kind of a thing that can does the automation job very quickly. So yeah, the OpenShift basically uses the V4 uses the operators. We use the operators for upgrades, and then certain other actions, the automation jobs. So yeah, Golang will be there in the future, coming future. I would say.
Yes, definitely. I even strongly agree that that when in the OpenShift, when we started talking about the operators, I guess that is something most important part, that we have taken the architectural shift from 3.x to 4.x, and now Golang is gonna be the next new norm, where we talk about the passing from C to this particular part, right?
Yeah,
So
like
that I
how,
totally.
yeah, how
Mhm.
Puppet Chef was decommissioned after Ansible came, right? And then now Ansible after Ansible operators are there. So yeah,
Yes, yes.
world is changing, man.
Totally, totally. So coming as we are on the top of ours, we are a very last question coming from the Hirsch, and even I was about to ask you that what is the daily job task of a site reliability engineer or the DevOps engineer? Is it like daily what you do to manage, or what means? Yeah.
Right. There are there are a couple of responsibilities. The first and primary responsibility is to monitor the infrastructure, to monitor the clusters. So we have some sort of monitoring solutions implemented, open source like Prometheus and Grafana, and then we page the on-call engineer if in case something goes wrong at the infrastructure side. When I talk about infrastructure, I mean our customers' workload are hosted on that platform, right? If something goes with that, we have to come into play and then troubleshoot it and then fix it. And alongside of this, we have to update our status pages so that customers should be aware there's something, some sort of investigation is happening in their cluster or something going wrong. Second thing is the development. So when
Right.
I say development, I mean like how can we make ourselves free? When I say free, like let's say we have 10 people in our team, right? We don't want everybody should be always be like troubleshooting something. We want like they should have some free space, right? Why can't we do automation so that this automation can be performed into the cluster and it does its job? We have to rarely pitch in and monitor, or rarely comes into play when something big happen. Why can't we handle it at the first place? Why can't we automate few items, right? So that it
Mhm.
saves our time. So that development comes into play where we have to do some sort of automation jobs. We have to write code. We have to, yeah, we use Golang these days with OpenShift, and we does the automation kind of a thing like upgrade automation and certain other automation operators we have. So yeah, these are like two parallel items for every SRE that has to be there. So development as well as the I would say the monitoring or infrastructure side of the house. Then
Right.
DevOps is more of, I would believe, uh, you know uh, DevOps are the ones who basically, it's a process basically. How do you deploy infrastructure? What all
Mhm.
sort of third party tooling you can implement? Let's say, why do we have to go to Nginx? Why do we have to go to Nagios? Why do we have to go to Prometheus? Or why do we have to go to some other load balancer? So that process, and how are we going to deliver any software or anything to our customers? Let's say for example कि भाई कस्टमर बोल रहा है कि मेरे को जैसे कुबरनिटीज का क्या है कि वर्जन जो है बहुत स्पीडली अपग्रेड होता है, जैसे वर्जन 1.13 14 15 16। सो इतना जल्दी डेवलपमेंट कैसे हो पाता है, राइट? जो पाइपलाइन है, जो बैकएंड का प्रोसेस है, वो डेवऑप्स जो प्रोसेस हैंडल करता है वो कैसे इंप्लीमेंट कर रहा है कि भाई आपने कोई कोड लिखा, आपका कोई गिट गिट है जहाँ पे आपने कोड लिखा, कोई भी वर्शनिंग टूल है, वहां से फिर आपका जो कोड है वो किसी पाइपलाइन में गया, वहां पे एनालिटिक्स परफॉर्म हुआ, फिर बाद में कुछ और चेक्स हुए, फिर टेस्ट पास हुए, फिर उसको सैंडबॉक्स में डाला या फिर स्टेजिंग एनवायरनमेंट, फिर प्रोडक्शन एनवायरनमेंट में डाला। सो ये सब जो प्रोसेस होते हैं बहुत इजीली और बहुत जल्दी, आज की डिमांड है कि जल्दी भी होना चाहिए, सिक्योर भी होना चाहिए और इजी भी होना चाहिए। उस केस में डेवऑप्स का रोल बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होता है। और इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को बिल्ड करने में, कोर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को बिल्ड करने में जो रोल होता है वो डेवऑप्स का होता है। जैसे टेराफॉर्म है, वो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बिल्डिंग के लिए टूल होता है। ये सब डेवऑप्स का मेनली रोल रहता है। एसआरई इज लाइक समवॉट लाइक डेवऑप्स, बट या कि वो हेल्पिंग है उनके लिए एक तरीके से, डेवऑप्स के लिए, कि हाँ हम थोड़ा आपका काम कम कर देंगे, वी विल डू दिस ऑटोमेशन काइंड ऑफ अ थिंग।
I
सो
believe
या
that I strongly agree to that particular part. And as we are on the top of our way, thank you so much, first of all, from me and the entire team of the Cheers with Gaurav. Thank you so much for accepting the request, because when I came to you, I was having the absolute mindset that I want the people to understand that when it comes to the Kubernetes, what are the essential requirement you should be knowing. like scheduler, etcd, and what way that you just showcase throughout the presentation, and also a few of the quick demos that you just show. I hope our all viewers like it up. So people, if you have any questions left, if you have any doubts, please feel free to drop in the comment, or else I have given the Himanshu's via LinkedIn address in the description box. You just go open it up, connect with him, and feel free to drop as many as question to him on the LinkedIn, and he'll be right there to answer them up as soon as he finds the time. So thank you so much, Via. Any piece of advice for all of us?
Thanks. First of all, thanks Gaurav for inviting me here. It's very pleasure for me to be here. मैं बस इतना ही कहूँगा कि भाई जैसे आज अपने डेमो देखा, right? It was very few steps were there. So even there are many. It's like a ocean. Kubernetes, it's like a ocean. You can just dive into that and learn many things. So I would just say learning, and then you will reach to the destination where you want to be. So
Right.
yeah, just keep learning yourself, upgrade yourself. That's it.
Right. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Means upgrading individual is equally important, and like one of the like our viewer rightly mentioned that. Thank you for simplifying the understanding of OpenShift and its component, and looking forward for more such session. So I'll also keep on requesting you to come back if wherever we need it, and as same like rightly mentioned that at the very first time you motivated me to come onto the Linux platform. Thank you so much for guiding all our viewers to get started with Kubernetes itself also, Bia.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Gaurav. Thank you.
Thank you. And for all the viewers, so this is was my one of the part where I thought of like introducing you all with the Kubernetes terminologies, where you are planning to learn Kubernetes or stepping your stone into the containers part. This is the right platform to get started, because troubleshooting and learning the concept is one thing, but equally important is to troubleshoot them and get to know that what are the things running in background. So I hope now you have the idea. If you still don't have, please go to Himanshu's Bia's LinkedIn handle, or connect to me, and I'll be there to host some more sessions like this where we can have some demonstrations, some of the comparisons, and also some of the interesting facts about Kubernetes, container, OpenShift, and many other. Because there are a lot of things which are planned. And just to say, like the closing part, that I was in thought, like I'm not the wise person to say, but when it comes to one of the sayings by the Paula White, that your words are the containers of power. Your words are the container for power, and by the words you speak, you frame the world. So Paula White rightly mentioned that your words are the containers of power, and by the words you speak, you frame the entire world. And similar thing happens in today's world. If you want to stay updated, stay motivated, you need to make sure that you are updated to the technology, not on the like just on the sea surface. You have to deep dive into it. And when it comes to the deep dive, as rightly Himanshu Bia said, that you need to be the person who knows the in depth of that particular technology. So keep learning, keep sharing your thought, stay connected. Follow me on LinkedIn, follow me on Twitter or on Instagram, and do like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support is much needed for all of us. And stay tuned. Please press that bell icon, because some exciting sessions are on your way.